Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 457, and my guests are Bárbara Ávila and David McDonald. I'm recording this preamble from the Cannes Film Festival. However, I met Bárbara and David and recorded this episode in Paris. Bárbara grew up in the south of Mexico City and moved to France in 2003. She founded Vavién, which linked young Mexican artisans with French designers. She's also worked in the water and environment sectors for the Worldwide Fund for Nature and UNESCO. She's a specialist in environmental outreach, and she's also teaching herself to draw. David is an author and copy editor. He founded the Intersection Arts Art Festival and a feminist book community called Lilith. He currently works with young authors in Paris. I met these two through my friend Lynn Yip, who has been on the show, and they are fantastic and funny and wonderful, and I enjoyed breaking bread with them a few times and getting to know them. And everywhere David goes, he brings books and says, "Have you read this?" and pulls out a book. It's great. And Bárbara is fascinating and creative and beautiful and wonderful, and they're lovely people. So I'm excited for you to hear this episode. Check out heyhumanpodcast.com for links and to learn more about my guests and the show. Check out susanruth.com to learn more about me and my other artistic endeavors, including which film festivals to see my film the first, including here in Cannes in France on May 21st, if you happen to be around, at 7 p.m. in the Palais H. And Seattle Film Festival will be on the 23rd, which is I think it's a Friday. Hold on, this is terrible production. But it's a Friday, 23rd, and that one will be at 9:30 p.m., I believe. You can get tickets at SIFF, Seattle International Film Festival. And what else? You can find me on socials under Susan Ruthism, and my music is at Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever you get your music. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for listening. Be well, be kind, be love. Here we go. Bárbara Ávila, David McDonald, welcome to Hey Human.
Thank you for having us. It's an honor.
Thank you, Susan. Really nice to meet you in Paris. We had an amazing time with you.
We met here in Paris. Very exciting. Friends with Lynn. I've actually now spent quite a bit of time with you both, and you lovely people and interesting and perfect for Hey Human. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. I want to start with how you both met.
Do you want to take this one?
I'm Mexican, and I actually came to France when I was like 25 years old. I intended to do a PhD, but then I realized that I'm a human person, so I really can't stay like inside the libraries and everything, right? So after 7 years in Toulouse, I moved to Paris. And in the middle, I happened to work in Spain, where I met a close friend who actually was trying to find a girlfriend for her best friend, it's David. So that's actually how we connect. And then we were living in Paris. We both not really wanted to be with anyone else. We were kind of having fun. We were kind of healing from previous relationships. And we were like, no, I don't think that's going to work. And suddenly, I don't know what happened. I think we were actually...
Well, we should, our friend in common, we should probably say that she was very determined. And so every time either of us went to spend any time with her, the other person would coincidentally be there. And she was absolutely, this was going to happen. She saw it in the stars, and she kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And then it finally clicked. And when we started dating, it moved very fast.
Yeah.
We moved in together on our fourth date.
Should say that at that moment I was working for a water film festival, and I was organizing this event in Istanbul. So I said to David, "Oh, why don't you come to visit?" And he actually came to visit it. And then I never came back to my house in Paris. I moved with him.
She was living in a very small space in Paris with a friend of hers, and it was kind of a walk-in closet.
Yeah.
And she'd used, and you know, in the kind of like the cupboard in the Harry Potter films under the stairs. It's kind of that sort of size.
It was nice, but it was the cheapest room of the flat, you know. So when you move to Paris and it's expensive and you are starting your professional life, that's like paradise. So I was happy.
Barbara moved into what was my apartment. I'd been in Montmartre for about 10 years, and she moved in with me, and that was in 2010. No, 2009, wasn't it? 2009. And then we got married a year later, and so this year's 15 years.
Yeah. But you know, can I say, I mean, mention something super funny, that when I actually went to visit David, he invited me, of course, for a date and everything, right? And I arrived and I say, David, I think I have been here. Because, of course, I mean, I have been invited to a party, but I didn't know who was the owner of the house, you know, that was hosting the party. So being there back is just like, come on, wait, I've been here.
Yeah, so we had a lot of friends in common, but we'd never met each other. So I'd thrown a party and she'd been there, and I'd been the host and like handing around drinks and taking coats and everything. We chatted briefly. And I think you said that you loved the apartment because it had lots of books.
Exactly. Books were like the thing that really say, oh, this is really nice. And records.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've found this to be true with David now immediately, that no matter what, you can pull about 6 books out of your bag at any given time.
Well, it's good to have like a book and a backup book just in case, you know.
But it's quite hard to live surrounded by books and records, you know. That's been, I think, our main discussion, because I prefer like minimalist space. I need to breathe, you know. And he immediately, let's build a bookshelf. And the bookshelf immediately covered the whole wall, right? So then suddenly we are again.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's true. She prefers, you know, the digital reading experience, and I'm very, very analog. So yeah, I like it. I like the books, the real records.
Same. I'm a book sniffer. I have to be able to hold the book. I have to touch it. The whole thing. It's very tactile, very sensory.
I love kind of like haunting secondhand bookstores, and then occasionally finding fun notes in margins and stuff. And I inherited books from my father, and it's got his old notes in that he's got from his father. So there's like 3 generations of notes going down the side. It's nice.
Yeah, that's cool. I like it when you find weird little letters or notes or shopping lists or things tucked in the old books. It's fun.
Oh yeah.
But I like it, but I don't like it. I mean, I don't like the smell of secondhand books. I don't like the yellow color on the pages. It's just like, I don't know why. Maybe that's why I can't really watch these films, black and white films. I don't know.
You don't like black and white film either?
No.
Oh, interesting.
Even if they are modern, it's kind of a hard. I don't know why. I mean, it's maybe just no.
I grew up with black and white television, so I didn't have a choice. I remember the very first time I saw Sesame Street in color, and I was like, Grover is blue? I had no clue. I thought in my head, you know, when you watch black and white things, and even though you know black and white, you kind of assign it a color in your head. So in my head, Grover was kind of chocolate brown. And then I saw a picture of Grover somewhere. I was just like, no, that's totally wrong. They've got it wrong.
Kermit, I guess you would assume, was green, but what about Cookie Monster?
Cookie Monster, I think he was maybe greenish, and he's not in real life. He's in real life. He's blue.
He's a blue.
Yeah.
He's a blue monster in real life. Yes, he's real. Don't you go there. 100% he's real. I think it's wild that you went to a party at David's house and you didn't know him yet, and that you two ended up together. It is one for the fates, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know the worst. I mean, I really don't believe in this kind of the coffee, how do you call this, the Turkish coffee reading and that kind of a tarot and that kind
coffee
of
grounds.
Yeah, I was like, no, not really. But when I was in Istanbul, the colleague I was working with, she said, come on, let me take you to the traditional one. So I went to that coffee place. No one, I mean, it was just Turkish. And then I was like, nah, I don't believe in that. Come on. And then the woman actually, she was really pissed off. And then she started kind of doing all the process. And she started actually telling me, you have met a guy with a big nose like this and this and that. You live in this kind of a room next to a stair. She basically started giving me a lot of details of my life. And I was like, oh my God. And she basically kind of...
she predicted our relationship pretty much on the nose and described me down to a T.
So, wow.
Coffee. It was a Turkish coffee.
Well, down to a coffee. Yeah, an espresso. No,
I just was like in shock. And then she asked me, do you have any more questions? And I was like, no, let's go.
yeah, I don't like any. I don't want to know anything about my future. It's always like the fear that it'll somehow change.
Do you speak Spanish as well? You both speak French. Did you grow up speaking French, Barbara? And then did you grow up speaking French? David, did you just say, hey, this is a language we both speak, or we both speak English? How did that go?
Well, the first 2 years of our relationship, we spoke in French. And then we moved from France to Mexico. And at that time, I mean, French made less sense when you were in Mexico. Barbara was speaking Spanish a lot of time. I started to pick up and develop an ear for it. And you started to learn some English.
Yeah, well, I had like the basic of English, but not as fluid as just to kind of do my life in English, right? And then we moved to Rome. And I was doing actually another master while David was working. So then I decided that it was maybe the time to learn English properly. So I went to the British Council and I started studying English in Italy. Because, of course, right?
And also while watching like multiple seasons of Dr. House.
Yeah.
So she's got a very good medical vocabulary. You know,
I can go to the doctor, no.
Yeah, in England.
It's always amyloidosis.
Yeah, you've got a bit of Italian as well, haven't you? Italian and Spanish are very close. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, no, for French, I just learned when I moved to France for the university.
Yeah.
But really, I mean, I was like the basic. I mean, first 3 months of university, I was just like guessing. But yes, of course.
Well, let's start with you, Barbara. Tell me about childhood growing up in Mexico and how that shaped you and your family, how it shaped you and your decision to then go to France.
I think that, well, I grew up in Mexico City, big city, but I live in the outside of the Mexico City, like in the south of the city. So it was quite far from the center. But still, I mean, it was a very nice neighborhood with lots of friends. We were kids going in and going out from the different houses. And my parents were both working. So I was at home with the nanny, of course, like in Mexico. But they were quite intellectual. My father was an architect and a painter. And my mother was a professor, a sociologist. So I think that they were always kind of pushing me to do what I really wanted to do. I also went to, it's a school called Active System, but it's kind of a mix of new kind of methodologies. It's kind of a Montessori thing. So that also gives you like a different way of thinking. You are kind of more critical and you are less the stress of what you're going to be doing. And I think that's since I maybe high school, I knew that I wanted to go abroad. I always wanted to move to Europe to do at least a master's or to travel around the world. That was always like what I wanted. And my parents always supported me. So I think that's how I...
You should explain about your house as well.
Yeah, well, my house is crazy because I said my father is an architect. So from outside, it looks like a rectangle, like a block. But inside, there is no right angle. So everything was made out to fit the space. So it was really crazy to live there. And of course, my father was always testing new technologies. So that house was never finished, you know. So one day you have a new ceiling or another day you have the carpenter. So they was being moved and then suddenly you have a hall for the living room. So it was really kind of a chaotic, I think. So it's always in movement, right?
If we were talking about Doctor Who yesterday, and you know that bit where every companion goes into the Tardis for the first time, freaks out and comes out and walks around it. That's what our house is like.
Yeah.
You walk in it and you're like, no, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but like two entrance or something. So it's weird. And then the thing is, like, in Mexico, you need a scholarship if you don't come from a wealthy family to actually pursue your studies abroad. So I got a scholarship, but I wanted to go to Amsterdam to the university to do some kind of studies on communication and development, education, that kind of thing. But that year, the master didn't open. So I had a scholarship and I didn't know where to go. So the option I had was going to Spain. So I ended up in Spain doing kind of an international media. But actually, it was really funny because the level was quite low in comparison to what I had. And I said, this is a waste of money, of time. So I went and complained with the director and I said, hey, this is not what I'm paying for. So they actually say, well, move to another school. And I moved to another school. But at that time, my ex was studying in France. So I said, well, why I not move to France? At least I will learn French. And that's how I actually ended up in France. But in a program in what they call a big school, how say, école,
Grande école.
a grande école, this kind of prestigious French schools, which is called Sciences Po. So it's kind of a different level. It's very intellectual. It's very, I don't know. It wasn't at all what I was expecting. It was international relations and security. So I was surrounded by militaries, and it was interesting. It was interesting, but it was not exactly what I expected. So I found a lot of film festivals, the Latin American Film Festival. So I volunteered there for 4 years, and it was amazing because I ended up going to different film festivals around Europe and picking up films and kind of watching all these Mexican films and selecting and collaborating closely with the programmer of the film festival. So it was really nice. So that's actually how I learned French, properly French. And then I had the opportunity to start an internship in Paris. And I had a friend living here. So that's how I moved to Paris. But I was always working with environmental films, like this idea of the power of storytelling and how you can actually raise awareness about environmental issues. And at that moment was water. So I was working in these kind of film festivals, like organizing the World Water Forums or these COP conferences organized by United Nations.
But you were in the Amazon before that with the turtles.
Not in the Amazons, actually. I was just a volunteer with sea turtles in Mexico in my teens. So
how was that?
It was amazing. It was,
yeah.
I think the experience is great because you work with these scientists and you are walking in the nighttime waiting to see like this shining kind of a thing moving, and it's a turtle. But then the problem is that, insecurity, like suddenly it wasn't a turtle, it was a pack of cocaine. So my parents say, next year, I don't think it's, you are not going next year, and I was just telling this story about, that wasn't actually a turtle. And suddenly these guys arrive with these motors and, like say, hey, that's for us, not for you. So that was dangerous, right?
Oh my God. Turtles know how to party.
Did you actually have the mating or when they had leave the eggs on the beach?
Yeah, that's what you do normally. I mean, you wait for the turtle to actually come out to the beach, and then they start making the nest. And then you are actually waiting there with your hands, you are measuring the turtle and you keep the eggs. And sometimes you also have these guys who sell the eggs in the market because they think they have aphrodisiac properties.
Aphrodisiac, yeah, sure. Like the tiger penis, the turtle egg, yeah.
You need to share with them, but normally you take all the eggs and you take it to the special place where they actually hatch until they hatch, and they are protected by the scientist. Yeah.
It's always eggs or fetuses. We were in Bolivia a few years ago, and we went into this witches market, and they were selling all of these products for, aphrodisiacs or for good luck. And they were all made out of dried llama fetus. And then if you look up at the ceiling of the market, there were all of these dried llama fetuses hanging down. It was really gruesome.
But
I love that there's a witches market, though. That's interesting.
It's still there. It's like the Mercado de Bruja.
say the witches.
Bruja. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah,
sure.
It's got even bigger now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's in La Paz in Bolivia.
Barbara, when you're dreaming, what language do you dream in?
I don't know. At the beginning, I think it was like French, and now I think it's English.
Interesting.
Yeah, but to be honest, now is really, I mean, of course, I know which language I'm speaking, but sometimes when I have conversations with friends, we switch to one language to another and we don't even notice. There are words that actually I'm trying to think in Spanish, but the word comes in French. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, oh my God, how do I say this in Spanish or in English? So it's all kind of sometimes it's complicated.
Was the Spanish of Mexico a big difference from the Spanish of España?
No, I mean, it's the accent, it's the pronunciation and some words, but basically we can kind of understand each other.
And do you have siblings?
No.
Lots of cousins.
Lots of cousins, yes, and friends, but no, single child.
And you're an artist as well. You draw.
I'm trying, as I say, my father was an artist, and I think that I always wanted to develop that part of the creative side of me, but I felt like a lot of pressure, like perfection. So that's why now I decided to start again, and I create this thing, like I fuck up my design. So it's actually trying, your best, but it doesn't matter if it's not really perfection, it's just about trying and learning and enjoying the process. So
and that's your Instagram. I fuck up my design.
Yes.
On Instagram, which is great. Fantastic.
So I'm being a little sarcastic, like when I draw and I think about things, and then I write little kind of things, just kind of to, how do you say, to joke about myself? No, how do you say when you
self-deprecating?
Yeah.
People are so scared of failure in France, so it's
everywhere. I think in general, yeah.
But perfection's the death of art, I think.
Exactly.
I don't want perfection, I think. But they say like it's a process, right? But it's interesting, and it's just like having fun, but make things more interesting.
Fun is a big part of it, for sure. You have to get the things out of you. So we are of creation. We must continually create. I think that's a big part of the human experience. To deny that would be a real shame.
Yeah, and recently I read something. They say something that life starts where your comfort zone ends.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
So now I'm actually trying to say, okay, it doesn't matter, put yourself out of your comfort zone, because that's when you really start kind of being creative, or being more like, I don't know, enjoying.
Yeah. All right, David, what about you? Childhood?
Complete opposite of Barbara. I grew up in a small English village in the south of England, not about 40 minutes from London by train. We're not talking sort of thatched cottages or anything like that, but it was about 900 years old market town. And it was a kind of fairly quiet place to grow up, but as you grow older, you kind of learn to appreciate it more, because it's a place with a very, very weird history. A lot of the land in it was owned by a branch of the Rothschild family, like big banking family. And the particular Rothschild, who at the time, I think it was in the 18th or 19th century, was big on hunting and safari. So he'd go to Africa and go on safari, and he'd go to Latin America, and he'd bring back animals, And so the grounds in this small English village were filled with giraffe and zebra and emus, and it says there was nowhere else like this in the UK. Eventually, of course, they were all they died, and he was obsessed with training zebra to pull carts. So the zebra ended up being like the emblem of the town. But he also, because when you import all these animals, all sorts of other stuff comes as well. So it's the only village in England that has African vermin. It's like this little creature called the gliss, and it just gets everywhere. It gets into the roofs, it gets into the pipes. It's a local hazard, and like all of the local kind of repairmen know about it, and they swear until they're blue about this little thing, which just gets everywhere.
Is it an ermine type creature?
Yeah, basically. I think it's close to a loir I think they call it in French. But not very big, but it makes a mess.
There's a lot of cats there in that town.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of birds. There's a big reservoir, and so a lot of birds. I grew up there from about the age of 3, and we had a pond in our garden, and which my mother diligently stocked with fish. And then once a year, a giant heron would land and eat them all. And she would be furious. And so she developed this local network. It was kind of like a neighborhood watch thing, except it was a heron watch. So as soon as the heron was spotted, she'd get a call. Someone would call and would go around, the heron's in there, the heron. So all of the people who had ponds were, and then she'd be out there sort of like waving newspapers and trying to keep the heron away. It never worked. The heron always got fish. And
that's so funny.
So all of these animals, eventually the town, they were all stuffed. They ended up in a museum, this kind of local annex of the British Natural History Museum, which has got everything from a dinosaur skeleton to these animals, and lots and lots of birds of paradise, which were collected from Latin America. And this was always kind of like just a local known thing. And as a kid growing up there, you don't care about this. You want to like go to the youth center or the park. You don't care about the museums. It's seen as stuffy. But it kind of hit the headlines about 10 years ago because the museum was burgled by an American flute player. and he
Never heard that sentence before.
it's strange. He was apparently can't remember his name. You can Google it, but he was obsessed with, you know what I mean by fly tying?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So he'd found a book with these kind of with rankings of the best flies you could tie, and a lot of them had become illegal. Because the birds were either endangered or close to endangered, and the only way you could access these feathers was to find either sort of on vintage clothes. So he'd been hunting through the vintage, and then he stumbled across on the web somewhere the name of the town I grew up in, which is called Tring, by the way. And he found about these birds. So he came over with, I think, the orchestra he was playing in, scoped out the place, and then broke in and stole armfuls of these precious birds. And
I feel like I heard about this guy.
yeah, there was an article written about him, and then a book written about the book's called, I think, The Feather Thief. But yeah, and he was tried, and he wasn't convicted, even though he had all the evidence. They found the evidence, but he wasn't convicted. And I think he's still playing a flute somewhere.
Yeah, but also your town is super famous. Actually, the guy who managed to broke into the bedroom of the Queen Elizabeth.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh yeah. There was a guy years and years ago who broke into Buckingham Palace, and he made his way all the way through the palace. I mean, he wasn't stopped by security, and he got up to the Queen's bedroom when she was still in bed. I think it was in the morning, and just kind of sauntered in and sat on the bottom of her bed, and she kind of kept him engaged in conversation while discreetly kind of pulling a sort of an alarm bell, silent alarm bell, until they came in and tackled him. And she just kind of kept him, talking. And yeah, and this guy was in my hometown. He was on my paper route as a kid. So I knew him. And it was just...
Did he seem like the kind of guy that would grow up to do that?
Well, when you're a kid, and you, I don't know how it is in the US, but at Christmas you get normally bonuses from some of the
paper route.
Some of the houses on your paper route, and I've seen in the US you have like the mailboxes outside. But in the UK, you've got the letterboxes in the door. And there's this kind of law, this sort of like a Murphy's Law of newspapers, that the thicker the newspaper, the smaller the letterbox. And there's inevitably a giant dog on the other side. I'd be getting up at 4:30 in the morning, get this giant sack of newspapers. I was about 10 years old, and getting up the hill and then putting them, and it'd be freezing cold and snow and everything. And I came to this guy's house and kind of stuffed the newspapers, supplement by supplement, because you have to, because it takes time and the dog takes all. And he hadn't left any, Christmas bonus or anything. And so I just kind of like turned around and trudged up the path. We got halfway down the road, and he ran out in a pair of Y-fronts, barefoot.
Of what?
Y-fronts, underpants.
Tidy whities. Got it.
In tidy whities, nothing else, running after me and screaming, "Little boy, you've forgotten your money." So yeah, draw your own conclusions.
And you have the Royal Ballet School too.
Oh yeah, there's a performing arts school in the town as well. So I think a lot of famous dancers, actors, Natalie Portman, for example, have passed through the school in this town. But there's a real town and gown thing, and where never the twain shall meet. But it's they're in the kind of that's in this mansion, which is in these parks, which were formerly filled with giraffes and zebra. So it's the same place, It's.
Did you grow up in a big family, a little family? What developed your love of books and put you on your pathway to that?
Oh, okay. Family of 4 siblings, all boys. I was the oldest. My father was an English literature teacher. My mother had a huge love of books from a very young age. And so I started, needing glasses fairly early. I was just like, I was one of those kids who was always reading with a torch under the cover, and
yes.
and someone told me recently in France, I think they don't start teaching kids to read until they're about six. And this completely threw me. I was well on the way to reading, long books by the time I was 6. I started when I was 4. I mean, but I was reading. I was one of those kids who was reading often beyond my age. Didn't always understand. I mean, I think we were talking about the James Bond books the other day. Yeah, which I read when I was about 9 or 10, and they were much too sexual. But I just didn't pick that up, because you don't when you're 10.
Sure.
My mother thought it was very important for us all to have a religious education, and sent us to Catholic school. And she'd had a very positive experience. That she went to a Catholic school, all-girls Catholic school in St. Albans, which is an old Roman town, and loved it. And so she packed us off to the local Catholic school. And we're not Catholic. We were the only non-Catholics there. So that kind of put a little bit of a target on our backs. Scarred us for life. They have mass every week, and you're the only ones who don't go up and, get the...
the communion up. That's a dead giveaway.
That's a dead giveaway. And there was always like this giant statue of Mary in sitting in the corner, which was kind of awe-inspiring when you're very small. And then my father, I don't know, for some reason, I think there'd been some arrangement for it to be repaired or something. And I came home from school one day, and it was lying on my mother's bed, or my parents' bed. This statue of Mary just kind of like lying there. I was like, what's Mary doing in my parents' bedroom?
That would be a great scene in a movie.
Yeah. It was that was kind of weird. And we had the one teacher I loved, she was a nun, and she was almost blind. And she taught us all how to draw and paint, but insisted we couldn't use the color black. And she was the first person I know to have contact lenses, and she kept losing them. And so periodically she'd shout, "Nobody move, nobody move." And we'd all have to freeze, and she'd get onto her hands and knees and try and find her contact lenses. Sister with
no coloring no painting black, the devil's color, I assume.
Yeah. And you couldn't use the word suddenly, because I think we were all writing, she asked us to write short stories, as you do as a kid, and we all overused the word suddenly, because we thought it was dramatic. So we were all starting every paragraph with "suddenly this happened," or "suddenly a policeman arrived," or "suddenly the aliens opened the door." And she was like, "No more suddenlies, and no color black."
That's incredible. What did you study at university?
Literature mostly. I signed up for 3 years, university in England, in Norfolk, which is kind of on the East Coast. And I signed up for 3 years, and then somehow realized I'd missed in the brochure that there was a 4-year option, including a year in the States. And I thought, I want that. So I swapped and got to study at a small liberal arts college in Massachusetts for a year, and studied everything I could, from French cinema to Chinese literature to Latin American gender politics. And it was amazing. It was the most wonderful education. It really was. And I think in many respects, the American education is superior to the UK version, because you have to decide immediately in the UK version what you're going to study. And that's pretty much what you study. You can take a minor, but the US version, you kind of start broad, and you've got these options before you.
That is true.
You would never even have considered. But you can keep changing up to a certain point.
Although your primary schools excel ours. So I think it's a switch, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah.
Talking about these primary schools, I mean, I just watched this TV show. What is it called? The Adolescents.
Adolescents. I've heard so much about it. I'm one of these people that watches a show about 8 years after it was popular. So
I'm not going to say anything, but that for me was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not a kid now.
Yes.
Oh gosh, I know, right?
Yeah.
Horrifying.
No,
shout out to all the kids out there that are listening. I'm sorry. It's tough, but my God, it must be tougher. But maybe every generation thinks out of the next few that come up, that how could they possibly manage? And yet we keep on trucking. So
yeah, pretty much.
When did you become an editor? How did that start?
Oh God, okay, that's a long story that I'll try and make really short. But basically, as a lot of happens with a lot of people who graduate with literature degrees, you're not quite sure what to do when you come out, and some people go into journalism or other fields, and I did temp work for a few years and realized I was working for an insurance company, and I realized that I was getting good at it, and this scared me, so I quit and went to Romania for a month and traveled around, and it was a wild trip. And I came back thinking this is a script, this is a film or something. So I started looking around for equipment, and I came to realize the town where I was still living in the same Norfolk town, Norwich, had lots of equipment, but no one was talking to each other because there were all of these old grudges. They operated like a village, and someone had slept with someone or someone hated someone. They're all vendetta after vendetta after vendetta. And I thought, well, you could. There's all of this art happening. There are art schools, and there's so much art, but there isn't an art scene because everyone has got bad experiences. So I said, let's create a festival, and an art festival. So I spent 2 years with some people and students, and we created this art festival and got all the different groups who hated each other involved, and and it kind of created a neutral space. And in the middle of all of that, I was working with a young photographer, Dutch photographer, and she turned up one day with this amazing project. She was working for a guy whose grandfather had been the aide-de-camp of the governor of New South Wales in New Zealand back in 100 years ago. And he traveled all around the world, and he'd taken all of these photographs, black and white photographs, and kept a diary. And the photographs were on silver nitrate film, and they were still stuck in, what do you call the pellicule, the little cans, and they'd never been developed. So she said, well, why don't I develop a few roles and you transcribe and edit his diary, and we'll do it as an exhibition. And so we did, and there were the photos were amazing. There were like Hollywood in the 1920s. There were Balinese dancers. There was the Niagara Falls. Everything. And the diary was just amazing. It was this insight from this 25-year-old man who was seeing the world as an aide-de-camp, meeting sultans, kings, queens, and that was my first taste of editing. And so I found a local editorial service company, and I said, will you train me and I'll work for nothing? And they took me on, and then they hired me and gave me basically an old-fashioned apprenticeship, and I learned everything with them. And the woman who ran it became my mentor, and she was brilliant. After that, I didn't stop. That was in the late 90s, and I've been one ever since.
What is it that draws you to certain stories, you think? What is the thing?
It changes, the books you read when you're a teenager and the books you read later in life, they're not the same. You grow and evolve. But when I was, I suppose, like a lot of people, I read, fantasy and science fiction when I was a teen, because you want something that's different. You want escape. Something clicked when I was I may have read a book by Milan Kundera or something like that, and I suddenly realized that books written by foreign writers from other cultures were there was more difference, more diversity than I could find in a sci-fi novel written by an English writer. Because, however, it's hard to escape your own culture, whether that's in art or in music or in writing. It's somehow woven in, like Lord of the Rings is intrinsically English somehow, however much it's Middle Earth, it's fundamentally English. And and suddenly I was reading foreign literature. I was reading, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and so that set me off. And it was just, and from then it's been, what new experiences can I learn? How far can I go? What can I learn that I haven't? Whose story haven't I heard yet?
It's a good point that, especially for those who either choose not to or cannot leave their hometowns or cities that they grew up in, that they can, by reading a book from someone from somewhere else, that they can be on that adventure somewhere through someone else's eyes. But I don't know about you, but when I read a book, I'm in it. I'm in the book.
It's the greatest teacher of empathy there is. I think if more people read fiction, we'd have less problems, simply for that reason. because you're learning to take yourself and put yourself in the mind of someone else.
But I think something that is very you is curiosity. I mean, he's curious about everything, and you take the risk of trying different things, like either with books or with music. I think that's what really drives you.
Yeah. But it's like, I don't know, it's my cocaine maybe, you know, at a very...
You and the turtles, man. What's up?
I remember when I was very young, going to a friend's house. I mean, I love music as much as I love books, and going round to like tea at a friend's place, and the father was playing his favorite record, and it was Jean-Michel Jarre. And I don't know if you know, like French electronic composer from the 70s. And it's something just exploded in my brain. I've never heard anything like this before. And it was different. The sounds were new, everything. I'd never heard music like it. And I think that becomes slightly addictive after a while. It's like, okay, what haven't I heard before? What's sonically different? What new arrangement? I love listening to, for example, or reading about Björk, because she's someone who's able to take English and shake it up and polish it and shine it and create a totally and write English in a way, or sing English in a way that no English person ever could. She's like spring cleans the language, you know?
Yeah.
When I was a teenager and before Spotify was available, and you had just an immense amount of music at your fingertips, what you had at your fingertips was were the records you owned, or the ones you could access from the local library, or the ones that were passed to you in mixes or mixtapes by friends. So it was limited, and it was cherished, because and so you became very intimately involved with not only this music, I mean, because people still get intimately involved with music, but with the physical object itself. So, like, as you say, with like the record, with like the or the tape or the book, or, you know, and sort of rereading it and finding every aspect of it. And it's very personal relationship, you know.
If somebody made you a mixtape or a mix CD, woo, baby, that was something.
Yeah.
I just remember, tell them about your dream. You know, this guy has the amazing dreams. Like you thought you were a song in a tape, no?
Yeah, I dreamt I was a song on a mixtape. Yeah, it was.
You dreamt you were a song on a mixtape.
Yeah, it was kind of. I used to make like lots of people mixtapes, and if you spend enough time playing with a piece of technology, it goes into your dream. So, you know, I've dreamt I was a PDF file as well. Yeah, it was an anxiety dream eventually, because I can't remember what song I was. I was just a happy little song. And I had two friends, and they were the song in front of me on the mixtape and the song behind me on the mixtape. And we were a nice little kind of like trio. And then one day, like, one of them disappeared, and then the other one disappeared as well. And I realized that we were being erased.
How did you anthropomorphize a song? How did it appear to you? Were you actual musical notes, or were you and you just had an understanding that you were a song?
I don't know. It's weird in dreams, though, isn't it? It's not logical. You know, you know, sometimes you're you, and sometimes you're some other version of you, or maybe you're something kind of abstract, you know, or an animal, or a day, or an emotion. You know, I just knew I was a song, you know, and it's.
I love that so much. That sounds like a great short story. Dreams fascinate me. I had a dream person on the show a while back that it was now that they can record dreams.
Wow.
Truly record them. You they have the electrodes on your head.
Wow.
They ask you to before you go to sleep, they ask you to visualize an item so that the computer starts to get a grasp of how you visualize.
Yeah.
And then while the people are sleeping, they do it. He did it in tandem with Parkinson's studies, because they were already putting wires in people's brains. And so they coupled the research, and they could get rudimentary visual representation of people's dreams and watch them on a computer go by as they were dreaming.
There was a Wim Wenders film like this years ago, Until the End of the World. It's a very long film, and most of it's just a chase film, and it's science fiction. But the very end, it's people recording and watching their dreams, but they get stuck. They get stuck watching their dreams, and then dreaming, so they can basically have more content to watch.
Oh, interesting.
And then it changes their dreams, because their dreams are dictated by what they're doing in their life, and all they're doing in their life is watching their dreams. And so basically there has to be an intervention to stop them, because otherwise...
Very Black Mirror. Black Mirror is just getting too real.
Yeah, but addiction, basically. I mean, we'd be, if we could watch our dreams, we'd get addicted.
But we just have a friend. She's actually quite simple. She can't control her dreams. I mean, she can't control when she's going to fly. So as soon as she starts dreaming and she see these little kittens, she knows that's the dream. And
she lucid dreams.
Yeah.
Lucid dreaming, yeah.
That is really cool.
Yeah, and the code is the kitten.
The kitten.
Yeah, she sees the kitten.
You can learn how to lucid dream for sure.
Yeah.
There are lots of books on it.
Have you lucid dreamed? Have you?
Yes, I have. I used to have really bad nightmares as a kid, so it was a way to help alleviate that. So I went to the library, got a bunch of books, and learned how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So
I can still do it here and there. I just don't have the need for it as much.
I mean, do you remember what your go-to activity was when you were lucid dreaming?
Yes, the hand. I look at the hand, and I look for a watch, because you can't see numbers. Like, you can't really see writing or it's the wrong part of the brain.
Yeah.
So if you can, then you're aware, you have a hyper awareness outside of yourself versus not being able to see anything.
And so at that point you knew you were in a dream. Yeah.
In a dream or not in a dream, or awake and experiencing. Because I've experienced some really weird things that are inexplicable unless you're dreaming. But I was wide awake, and so I have all these little tests so that I know at what point of my consciousness I'm in.
Yeah,
but
I'm a weirdo though. From a long line of weirdos.
And you can't move.
That's dream paralysis.
Oh, sure.
You ever?
Oh, yeah. I haven't had the sleep demon sitting on me or anything. I think maybe that's happened once or something. But I do a lot of the falling, however.
Yes.
I've had the sleep paralysis once, and
very often.
My and stepmother had it. She said that there was woke up, screaming. She said there was a monkey on her chest with its hands around her throat, and my father kind of got her back to sleep. And then the next night he woke up with the monkey on his chest and the hands around it. So
he did. So maybe they did have a monkey demon or something.
Maybe it escaped from.
It was that story that they went to check on the desk because the person who has died.
Oh no, that was somebody else. Yeah, that was.
Oh my God.
That was a dream.
Or I love ghost stories. If you want to tell it, I'm fine.
No. This was one where I think it was a lost will, and someone. My stepmother had a dream, and the relative, as may have been her father or something, came and showed her how to find a secret drawer, secret compartment in a piece of furniture that she owned that she didn't know she had, and how to get the will from out the back. And next morning she woke up and opened the secret compartment, and the will was there.
These are why dreams are so important. So to watch them, I think you would get, imagine all the information you would get if you could physically watch your dream after the fact. And I'm sure a lot of it would be real gooey, but there would probably be so much your brain is trying to tell you, because it already is trying to do that with the dreams. Most people just don't remember when they wake up what they've dreamt. My dreams are incredibly vivid, so I usually remember.
But I wonder if any attempt to kind of portray that would be sort of imposing a narrative. Because often I find in dreams it's not as simple as, sometimes they are, it's semi-realistic, but sometimes they're very abstract. I mean, if yours are if you have vivid dreams, but are they kind of more realistic in terms of,
Incredibly, sorry, there was a motorcycle going by. Incredibly realistic.
Yeah.
Incredibly realistic. I wake up exhausted sometimes from dreaming.
David.
And then I think, oh, good, I'm awake. I can relax now.
For years and years, I'd had trouble breathing. And I'd wake up in the morning, sleep
apnea, you mean?
Well, it wasn't. It's related. It was. I was groggy all the time. It would take me about half an hour to wake up. And I finally went and saw a specialist, and he said, you've broken your nose? And I was like, yes, I broke it when I was 8 years old. I actually fell on a bookcase, which I think is, genetic fatalism or something. I don't know. But broke it, and it never healed properly. And I also, it turned out, had an allergy. So I had polyps in my sinuses. So he said, well, you've had sleep deprivation for about 40 years. And you're not getting enough sleep at night. You're not getting enough oxygen at night. And he's like, what are your dreams like? I'm like, I'm constantly anxious in my dreams. And he says, what are you like when you wake up? And I say, I'm groggy. He said, yes, you're not getting oxygen. So I had an operation, and they corrected a deviated septum and got rid of the polyps. And then for the month after that, it was weird because I'd go to sleep and I'd just see these faces flashing past, and I'd be like, who are these faces? And they for like decades in my past, all of these people I'd met would be running through my head really, really, really fast. Like decades of memories that had never been processed.
Oh, whoa.
I got stuck. So for 1 month, plus or minus, it just flooded through. And it was a very odd feeling because it was too fast, and I was like, I know that person. Who was that? Oh, they've gone.
You were defragging.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, my whole brain for a month. It was weird, and then it settled down, and now my dreams are less anxious, and
That's kind of badass, actually. Wow.
it was strange.
Well, okay. So what are you both working on now? Barbara, you've got the website and working on your art. What else are you guys working on together or separately?
Well, I'm kind of starting a new, path. I'm trying to make things that have more meaning, right? So I want to continue working with the media, but more like raising awareness. So it's really funny because I in contact again with a friend. It's an American friend that she created this initiative called Let's Talk About Water. So she's been organizing these meetings where she screens films related with water. She invites filmmakers, scientists, and also like stakeholders. So she just held an event in Paris with the OECD, for example, and she's organizing a new one in Nice with this conference on oceans and another one with UNESCO. What the idea is the power of the audiovisual to convey messages and to launch discussions to change the thing. That's what Let's Talk About Water is. So now I'm involved in that again. And I'm helping Linda Lilienfeld, which is the founder, to set up this kind of new event. So she's based between Washington and New York, but she's a film researcher. So she's been she knows everyone, and she's been doing an amazing research on film. So I'm really glad to be back into the field.
We just went to one of these events, and there was she'd taken this very amazing silent film of the Amazon made in the 1910s or earlier, even very, very early cinema, and which has just been recovered and created a completely new soundtrack for it. And it was absolutely beautiful to watch.
But the other thing that is quite interesting is that Natch is also organizing competitions. So, for example, right now there is an ongoing one which is Arid Lands, and she's going to launch another one about glaciers because it's International Year of Glaciers and the Cryosphere. So she actually reward young filmmakers or scientists. So it's really interesting, supporting the production of new films, but also using film as a kind of a a tool to raise awareness and to launch this kind of putting everyone in the same place to discuss about this important issue, right? Which is
it's smart. I mean, water is going to be, it's already being commodified in America, I'm sure, and elsewhere too, but where goes water, there goes humanity. So it's important.
Yeah, and it's basically from arid lands to the top of the mountains, glaciers, right? And how all this is interconnected.
Yeah.
So, she was discussing if she's going to screen Nanook, the Eskimo, in Nice, and how it will go. Not sure, but all this, it's maybe a very old film, but at the same time, it has a lot of knowledge, local knowledge that maybe we are losing, that we maybe need to rethink about what local communities and indigenous people can actually, how they've been managing water resources and how we can learn from them, right? It's not it's kind of what they say, co-creating knowledge, science and knowledge. So that's.
But just keeping it out there in the zeitgeist is important. The things we take for granted.
Yeah.
I get excited because I find that Barbara periodically, about every 10 years, blows up her professional life and then does something amazing. And last time she did this, she created a company, which she hasn't talked about yet, where she puts essentially young designers and creators from small Mexican villages in touch with French brands, and brought over all these young Mexican mostly young women, And it was the most amazing thing. It was an association called Vavién, and it changed people's lives.
Called what? What is it?
Vavién.
And there were it ran for how many editions? 4 editions. And with all of these wonderful sort of young designers came over. There was like a contest, and the winners came over, and they're incredible because one of the things, I mean, Barbara could say more than me, but especially with young female artisans, first of all, they share any information they get. So any information they learn gets shared with the family and the broader community as well. And so I think it was an incredible experience for, I mean, you know more about this, but
yeah, but he was really impressed. I mean, for me it was yes, but I don't know. I think that we could do more, but well.
Yeah.
But it was the first.
Yeah, I'm a book editor, so I'm already editing books. There's one is like 7 volumes on camels, so I'm learning all about camels right now. It was just
that's such a lovely benefit to the job, I suppose, that you learn about so many different things.
This is the thing people always say is you must know so much, but the problem is the brain can only hold so much.
Sure.
So you become an expert in something very intensely for a short amount of time, and then you have to kind of reboot. And
you need a Tardis brain.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. And the thing is, but I mean, like a lot of people, my brain hangs on to stories. It's like I can only remember a joke if it's a story. So all the jokes I know are really long. But I can remember the very first book I edited. It was about human rights and gender in Southeast Asia. And I learned about, for example, proxy convicts. Do you know proxy convicts?
I'm assuming that if you're wealthy, you can send somebody to prison instead of your sibling or parent or child if you have the money. So, and there are people who are so poor that will take that money and send their own. Yeah, that's my guess. Is that right?
You're very, very close. But what that means in gender terms is very often they'd send the woman in the family if the man is convicted, because the man is the breadwinner. And once she's been in prison and served her time, she's also tainted, and so isn't always invited back into the family. So and that really marked me, and it was sort of, I guess, turned me into a feminist. And I'm working with a young Russian author at the moment who's doing some wonderful work, and we may be working on her prison diaries. So I'm fingers crossed.
Yeah, tell people how they might find you out in the big world of webs.
Fuck Up My Design.
I fuck up my design on Instagram for you. Yes.
I'm gone old school. It's come find me in a Paris cafe and I'll buy you a coffee.
Thank you both so much. Thank you for listening, everybody, and bye.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.
Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Au revoir.